K-9 partner and blind officer, a story of trust and bravery in court. Officer Ryan Carter had always dreamed of becoming a police officer. Though born with a degenerative eye condition that left him completely blind by his late 20s, Ryan refused to let his disability define him. Instead, he worked harder than most to prove his mettle. When the local police department introduced a new initiative to pair blind officers with highly trained K-9 units, Ryan knew he had found his chance. Enter Max, a sleek German shepherd with a keen nose, sharp instincts, and an unbreakable bond with his human partner. From the moment they met, Ryan and Max were inseparable. The two trained tirelessly, learning to read each other's movements and forming a partnership built on trust and mutual understanding. Together, they patrolled neighborhoods, uncovered hidden contraband, and even diffused tense situations with their calm demeanor and sharp skills. But their greatest test came when they were called to testify in a high-profile court case. The trial involved a notorious gang leader, accused of smuggling illegal weapons into the city. Max had been instrumental in uncovering the hidden cache of firearms during a routine checkpoint, but the defense argued that the evidence might have been compromised. Ryan's testimony and Max's credibility were crucial to ensuring justice was served. The courtroom buzzed with tension as Ryan and Max entered. The defense attorney wasted no time questioning the reliability of a blind officer and his K-9 partner. "How can a man who cannot see possibly know what his dog discovered?" the attorney sneered. Ryan remained calm, placing a hand on Max's head. "With all due respect, it's not about what I see, it's about what Max sees, smells, and senses," he said. "And I trust Max with my life, just as the community trusts him to protect them." The prosecution presented evidence from Max's training records, video footage of the operation, and expert testimony about the bond between K-9s and their handlers. Still, the defense continued to hammer away at Ryan's blindness, trying to paint him as unreliable. Then came the moment that silenced the courtroom. The judge allowed Max to demonstrate his training in the courtroom itself. At Ryan's quiet command, Max flawlessly identified a hidden object, buried under layers of distractions, proving his expertise. The demonstration left no doubt in anyone's mind about Max's skills or Ryan's ability to guide and interpret them. The jury returned a guilty verdict, and justice was served. As the courtroom emptied, Ryan knelt down and hugged Max tightly. "We did it, buddy," he whispered. Max wagged his tail, as if to say, "We always will." Ryan and Max's story became an inspiration, proving that bravery, trust, and determination could overcome any obstacle. Together, they reminded the world that true strength isn't measured by sight, but by the vision to see what truly matters. As the trial ended and Ryan and Max stepped out of the courthouse, they were met with applause from a small crowd that had gathered outside. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashed, and microphones were thrust toward Ryan. "Officer Carter, how does it feel to have played such a crucial role in this case?" one journalist asked. Ryan smiled, his hand resting firmly on Max's back. "It's not just me. It's Maximum. Without him, none of this would have been possible. He's not just my partner, he's my eyes and my strength." Max barked softly, as if agreeing with his handler. But as the excitement of the day settled, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that the case wasn't over. The gang leader had allies, dangerous ones, and Ryan knew that exposing their operation had made him and Max a target. The department shared his concern. A special security detail was assigned to watch over him, but Ryan refused to let fear dictate his actions. Later that evening, back in their small apartment, Ryan sat on the floor with Maximum. He ran his fingers through the shepherd's fur, feeling the calm heartbeat beneath. "Looks like we've got more challenges ahead, buddy," he murmured. "But we've faced worse, haven't we?" Max nuzzled Ryan's hand, his tail wagging. It was as if the dog understood every word. The next few weeks were quiet, too quiet. Then, one night, while Ryan and Max were out for their evening walk, Max suddenly stopped. His ears perked, and his body tensed. Ryan gripped the leash tightly. "What is it, Max?" he whispered. A faint noise came from an alleyway nearby, a shuffle, the sound of feet trying to stay silent. Max growled low in his throat, and Ryan's pulse quickened. "Who's there?" Ryan called out. His voice was calm, but his grip on Max's leash tightened. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward. "You've got guts, Officer Carter," a man sneered. "But guts won't keep you safe." Before Ryan could respond, Max sprang into action, barking fiercely and lunging toward the threat. The man hesitated, startled by the dog's aggression. Ryan pulled out his radio and quickly called for backup, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. Within minutes, the sound of sirens filled the air, and the man bolted. Max wanted to give chase, but Ryan held him back. "Not yet, buddy," he said. "Let the team handle it." As backup arrived and the area was secured, Ryan couldn't shake the realization that this was just the beginning. The gang wasn't going to give up so easily. Back at the precinct, Ryan met with his captain, who confirmed his fears. "We've intercepted chatter. They're not done with you or Max," the captain said grimly. "We need to stay one step ahead." Ryan nodded. "We will. Max and I are ready for whatever comes next." And so, the battle wasn't over. Ryan and Max knew they were walking into a storm, but they also knew they weren't alone. Together, they were a force to be reckoned with, unstoppable, unbreakable, and always ready to face the unknown. Weeks passed, and Ryan and Max became more vigilant. Though life seemed to return to normal, the shadow of the gang's threat loomed over them. Ryan's instincts told him the fight wasn't over, and Max's heightened alertness confirmed it. One crisp evening, Ryan received a call from Detective Parker, one of the lead investigators on the gang case. "Ryan," Parker began, his voice tense, "we've picked up intel. The gang's planning something big. They're targeting key officers involved in the trial, you're one of them." Ryan's grip on the phone tightened. "What's the plan?" "We're assigning you and Max to a special task force. We need to shut this operation down for good, but we'll need your expertise and Max's skills to make it happen," Parker explained. Ryan didn't hesitate. "When do we start?" The very next morning, Ryan and Max were briefed alongside the task force. The gang's new operation involved smuggling weapons through abandoned buildings in the industrial district. Their base of operations had been identified, but it was heavily guarded. The team's mission was to gather evidence and dismantle the network, and Ryan and Max were crucial to the plan. That night, the team moved in under the cover of darkness. Max, outfitted with a specialized vest and equipped with a camera, led Ryan and the team through the maze-like warehouse. Max's sharp senses were the team's greatest asset, and Ryan's commands kept him steadied as they approached the gang's hideout. Max suddenly stopped, his ears twitching. Ryan knew what it meant. "What is it, Max?" he whispered. Max growled softly and pulled toward a nearby door. Ryan raised a hand, signaling the team to halt. One of the officers checked the camera feed from Max's vest and confirmed movement inside. The team moved in quickly, securing the area. But the gang was ready. A firefight broke out, and chaos erupted. Ryan stayed low, relying on Max's guidance and the team's instructions to navigate the danger. At one point, Max lunged at a man attempting to flee with a bag of evidence. The shepherd's powerful grip brought the man down, and Ryan quickly moved in to secure the suspect. "Good boy, Max," he said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline. After what felt like hours, the operation ended with the gang members apprehended and their operation dismantled. The evidence recovered was enough to ensure the network would crumble. Back at the precinct, Ryan and Max were met with cheers and applause. Detective Parker clapped Ryan on the shoulder. "You and Max just saved this city from a lot of harm. We couldn't have done it without you." Ryan knelt beside Max, rubbing his ears. "It's all him. He's the real hero." Max wagged his tail, his eyes bright with pride. But as Ryan looked around at his team, he knew this wasn't the end. The fight for justice never truly ended, and he and Max would always be ready for the next challenge. A few days after the successful raid, Ryan and Max were back to their usual patrols. The city had quieted down, but Ryan could feel the tension beneath the surface. The gang might have been weakened, but Ryan knew from experience that criminals like them never stayed silent for long. One evening, as Ryan and Max walked through a familiar neighborhood, Max stopped abruptly. His ears perked, and he sniffed the air with urgency. Ryan's hand instinctively tightened on the leash. "What is it, Max?" Ryan asked softly, crouching down to sense Max's movements. Max growled low in his throat and pulled toward an alleyway. Ryan trusted his partner implicitly and followed. The faint sound of muffled voices reached Ryan's ears. He pressed himself against the brick wall of the alley, listening carefully. "They think they've won," a gruff voice muttered. "But the real shipment is coming tomorrow night. We just have to move it before anyone catches on." Ryan's heart raced. He pulled out his radio and whispered into it. "Dispatch, this is Officer Carter. I've got a lead on another smuggling operation. Requesting backup at 5th and Pine." As he waited for backup, Ryan crouched low, his hand on Max's back. Max stayed perfectly still, his sharp eyes locked on the shadows where the voices were coming from. Moments later, a group of men emerged from the alley, carrying crates. Ryan didn't need to see to know they were up to no good. "Stay ready, Max," he whispered. When the backup team arrived, the men tried to scatter, but Max was faster. At Ryan's command, Max darted forward, cutting off the leader's escape route. The man froze, hands in the air, as Max barked fiercely, his teeth bared. The team quickly secured the scene, and Ryan was hailed as a hero once again. But as the suspects were led away, one of them turned and smirked. "You don't know what you've stepped into, officer," he said. "This is bigger than you think." That night, as Ryan sat in his apartment with Max at his side, the man's words replayed in his mind. He knew there was a bigger game at play, something they hadn't uncovered yet. Max rested his head on Ryan's lap, sensing his unease. "You feel it too, don't you, buddy?" Ryan murmured, stroking Max's fur. "This isn't over." "Not yet." Ryan's phone buzzed, and he answered immediately. It was Detective Parker. "Ryan, we've just received intel about a larger operation tied to the gang. They're planning to strike back, and we need you and Max on this." Ryan sighed deeply but nodded, his resolve strengthening. "We're ready. Just tell us where to go." As he hung up, Ryan looked down at Maximum. "Looks like we've got another fight ahead of us," he said. Max wagged his tail, ready as always. The storm was far from over, but Ryan and Max were prepared to face it together, no matter what dangers lay ahead. The next morning, Ryan and Max joined the task force at the precinct for a high-stakes briefing. Detective Parker stood at the front of the room, a map of the city projected behind him. Red circles marked several key locations. "This is it," Parker began. "The intel confirms that the gang's leader, Victor Kane, is still in operation and planning a major arms deal tonight. If we don't intercept, they'll flood the streets with illegal weapons. This is the biggest sting we've ever attempted, and it's dangerous. Carter, we'll need you and Max to lead the infiltration team." Ryan nodded, his hand resting on Max's head. "We're ready." The plan was simple but risky. Ryan and Max would infiltrate the warehouse first, using Max's advanced scent training to locate the hidden weapons. Once the stash was identified, the rest of the team would move in. As the sun set, Ryan found himself crouched behind a shipping container outside the warehouse. Max was at his side, calm but alert, his sharp eyes scanning the shadows. Ryan took a deep breath, running his hand along Max's back. "We've got this, buddy," he whispered. At a quiet command, Max began to lead Ryan toward the building. The warehouse was eerily silent, the faint hum of machinery in the distance the only sound. Ryan's earpiece crackled as Parker's voice came through. "Carter, you're clear to proceed. Stay sharp." Inside, Max guided Ryan through the maze of crates and corridors. Suddenly, Max stopped, his nose twitching. Ryan knelt beside him, recognizing the signal. "You've found something, haven't you?" he murmured. Max barked softly, pulling toward a stack of crates in the corner. Ryan reached out, feeling the surface. The wood was cold, and the faint smell of gun oil reached his nose. This was it. "Parker, we've located the weapons," Ryan whispered into his radio. "Sending Max's camera feed now." The team was just about to move in when Ryan heard voices. The gang was returning. He ducked behind a crate, Max by his side, as heavy footsteps echoed through the warehouse. "Double-check everything," one of the men barked. "We can't afford any mistakes." Ryan's heart pounded as he listened to the men unloading crates and talking about the deal. He knew he couldn't wait for backup without risking detection. "Max," he whispered, giving the signal. Max sprang into action, darting out from their hiding spot and barking furiously. The men shouted in surprise, scattering as Ryan stepped into view. "Police! Don't move!" The distraction bought just enough time for the task force to storm the building. Chaos erupted as officers poured in, securing the area and apprehending the gang members. In the middle of it all, Max chased down one of the ringleaders trying to escape through a side door. The man tripped and fell as Max lunged, pinning him to the ground until officers arrived to cuff him. When the dust settled, the team had recovered the weapons and arrested Victor K-9 himself. It was a major victory, one that would cripple the gang's operations for good. Back at the precinct, Parker clapped Ryan on the back. "You and Max did it again, Carter. We couldn't have pulled this off without you two." Ryan knelt beside Max, ruffling his ears. "It's all thanks to this guy. He's the real hero." Max wagged his tail, his eyes bright with pride. But Ryan knew this wasn't the end. The streets would always hold new dangers, and there would always be those who needed to be brought to justice. As long as he had Max by his side, Ryan was ready for whatever came next. Weeks after the raid that dismantled Victor K-9's operation, Ryan and Max had become local heroes. Their story was featured in newspapers, on television, and even in police academy training sessions. But fame came with complications. One cold January night, as Ryan was returning home from a late shift, Max suddenly stopped in his tracks. His ears perked, and a low growl escaped his throat. Ryan's instincts kicked in. "What is it, Max?" he whispered, tightening his grip on the leash. A second later, a black van screeched to a halt nearby, and masked men jumped out. Before Ryan could react, they rushed toward him. Max sprang into action, barking furiously and lunging at the attackers. Ryan managed to radio for help as Max took down one of the men, his teeth sinking into the attacker's arm. The men, clearly not expecting such fierce resistance, scrambled back into the van and sped away, leaving their injured accomplice behind. Within minutes, sirens blared as officers arrived on the scene. Ryan knelt beside Max, checking him over. "You okay, buddy?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. Max wagged his tail, unharmed but clearly on edge. The injured man was taken into custody, and under intense questioning, he revealed a chilling truth. Victor K-9's allies were regrouping, and Ryan and Max were at the top of their target list. The revelation sent shockwaves through the precinct. Ryan's captain insisted he take a leave of absence for his safety, but Ryan refused. "If they're coming for us, we're not running," he said firmly. "Max and I will face whatever comes our way." In the days that followed, Ryan and Max were assigned to a special protection detail while also assisting the task force in tracking down K-9's remaining allies. The investigation led them to a series of safe houses across the city, each one more dangerous than the last. One night, during a raid on a suspected hideout, Max made an extraordinary discovery. While searching the property, Max began barking at an old, locked cabinet. Inside, the team found detailed plans for a coordinated attack on several key locations in the city, plans that would have caused mass chaos if carried out. Ryan's captain looked at him and Max with a mix of gratitude and admiration. "You two just saved countless lives," he said. But Ryan knew it wasn't over. As long as Victor K-9's network existed, the city wasn't safe. And as long as that was the case, he and Max would be on the front lines. Later that night, back at home, Ryan sat with Max by his side. He stroked the dog's fur, feeling a sense of calm despite the storm they were still in. "You're incredible, you know that," he said softly. Max licked his hand, his eyes full of loyalty and trust. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: together, Ryan and Max were unstoppable. The city was holding its breath. Victor K-9's allies had been dismantled one by one, but the gang's inner circle remained elusive. Ryan and Max were working tirelessly with the task force, but they couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was coming. One late evening, Ryan received a call from Detective Parker. His voice was tight with urgency. "Ryan, we've got something. An informant claims K-9's people are planning a final move, something huge. It's going down tomorrow night at the docks." Ryan straightened in his chair, his hand instinctively finding Max's head. "Do we have specifics?" Not yet, Parker admitted. But if this intel is right, it's our chance to end this once and for all. We need you and Max to lead the operation. Ryan didn't hesitate. We're in. The next evening, the team gathered in the staging area near the docks. The cold wind from the water whipped through the air, and the smell of salt lingered heavily. Ryan knelt beside Max, adjusting his specialized vest and checking the camera feed. This is it, buddy. One last push. Max's ears twitched, and his tail wagged slightly as if to say he was ready. The docks were sprawling and dark, with towering cargo containers creating a maze of hiding spots. Ryan and Max were the first to move in, their job to scout and locate Kane's hideout. The rest of the team followed closely, waiting for Ryan's signal. As Max led Ryan through the maze of containers, his body tensed, and he let out a soft growl. Ryan stopped, his senses sharp. What is it, Max? The dog pulled toward a cluster of containers, his nose working furiously. Ryan relayed the location to the team, and they moved in quietly. Suddenly, voices echoed in the distance. Load it all up. We've got to be out of here before sunrise. Ryan crouched low, listening. He could hear the sound of crates being moved and the faint metallic clink of weapons. This was it. Team, they're here, Ryan whispered into his radio. Moving in closer. But before he could get closer, Max froze. A split second later, Ryan heard it too, a faint click. A trap. Everyone hold position, Ryan barked into his radio, his heart racing. They've set up a tripwire. Max carefully backed away, leading Ryan safely out of harm's way. The team immediately adjusted their approach, disarming the trap and continuing their advance. The gang members were caught off guard as the task force swarmed in. Chaos erupted as officers took control, but in the middle of it all, a familiar figure appeared, Victor Kane himself, barking orders to his men. Ryan felt a surge of determination. Max, let's go. Max darted forward, weaving through the chaos with precision. He locked onto Kane, who was trying to flee toward a speedboat waiting at the edge of the dock. Ryan followed, his trust in Max absolute. Kane barely made it to the boat before Max lunged, knocking him off balance. He fell hard onto the dock as Max stood over him, growling fiercely. Ryan moved in, cuffing Kane with practiced ease. It's over, Kane, Ryan said, his voice steady. The operation was a complete success. With Kane in custody and the weapons seized, the gang's reign of terror was finally brought to an end. Back at the precinct, the team celebrated their victory, but Ryan stayed quiet, sitting beside Max and scratching his ears. You did it again, Max, he murmured. We did it. Max leaned into him, his tail thumping against the floor. Though the city was safe for now, Ryan and Max both knew their work wasn't done. There would always be new challenges, new threats, and new battles to fight. But whatever came next, they'd face it together. Months passed since Victor Kane was taken into custody, and the city began to breathe easier. Ryan and Max had become symbols of resilience and trust within the department, earning recognition for their courage. But despite the relative calm, Ryan had a nagging feeling that not all pieces of the puzzle had fallen into place. One crisp morning, as Ryan and Max arrived at the precinct, Detective Parker greeted him with a grim expression. We've intercepted chatter, Parker began, leading Ryan to the briefing room. Kane might be behind bars, but his empire isn't completely dismantled. There's someone new pulling strings, a shadow figure we haven't identified yet. They're more elusive and possibly more dangerous. Ryan frowned. Any leads? Just one, Parker said, tapping a grainy photo on the table. It showed a woman stepping into a black car, her face partially obscured. She's been spotted meeting with remnants of Kane's crew. Her name's Alina Voss, and from what we've gathered, she's not just picking up the pieces, she's building something bigger. Ryan studied the photo, a sense of foreboding settling over him. Max sniffed at the picture, as if sensing its importance. We're assigning a surveillance team, but we'll need you and Max if this escalates, Parker added. Ryan nodded. If she's trying to rebuild, we'll stop her. The calm before the storm. The next few weeks were quiet, almost too quiet. Ryan and Max went about their usual patrols, but the feeling of being watched never left them. One evening, as they walked home through a quiet neighborhood, Max stopped suddenly, his body tense. Ryan froze. "What is it, Max?" Max growled low, his gaze fixed on a parked car across the street. A figure inside the vehicle quickly drove off as Ryan reached for his radio. The incident only added to Ryan's unease. Whoever Alina Voss was, she wasn't staying in the shadows for long. The breaking point. Late one night, an urgent call came in. A warehouse on the outskirts of the city linked to K-9's old operations had been set ablaze. When Ryan and Max arrived at the scene, firefighters were already battling the flames. Detective Parker met him there, his face grim. "This wasn't an accident. Someone's sending a message. We found a calling card inside before the fire spread, a note with a single word: restart." Ryan's jaw tightened. Whoever Alina Voss was, she wasn't just rebuilding K-9's empire, she was declaring war. The hunt begins. The department doubled its efforts, and Ryan and Max were at the center of the investigation. They followed every lead, combed through evidence, and worked tirelessly to piece together Alina's network. It all came to a head one evening when Max led Ryan to an abandoned shipping yard. The scent trail was strong, and Max's body language told Ryan they were close. As they moved through the maze of containers, Ryan's radio crackled. "Be careful, Carter," Parker's voice came through. "We think Alina herself might be there." Ryan's grip tightened on Max's leash. "We've got this," he replied. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the yard. "Officer Carter, we've been expecting you." Ryan's heart raced as Alina Voss stepped out of the shadows, flanked by two armed men. She smiled, her demeanor calm and calculating. "You've been a thorn in my side," she said, her eyes flicking to maximum, "but this ends tonight." Before Ryan could respond, Max lunged, his bark echoing through the yard. Chaos erupted as backup arrived, gunfire breaking out as officers engaged Alina's men. Ryan stayed focused, trusting Max to guide him as they navigated the chaos. Alina tried to flee, but Max intercepted her, blocking her path and growling fiercely. "Don't move," Ryan shouted, his weapon trained on her. Realizing she was cornered, Alina raised her hands, her expression cold. "This isn't over," she said, her voice steady. As officers cuffed her and secured the scene, Ryan knelt beside Max, his hand shaking slightly as he patted the dog's head. "You did it again, buddy. A new chapter." With Alina Voss in custody, the city could finally breathe again. But Ryan knew this wasn't the end. There would always be new threats, new challenges, and new battles to fight. As he and Max walked home that night, Ryan felt a deep sense of gratitude for his partner. "Whatever comes next," he said softly, "we'll face it together." Max wagged his tail, ready as always. Weeks after Alina Voss's arrest, the city was in a tentative state of relief. Alina's network had been unraveled, and with her behind bars, it seemed the last remnants of Victor K-9's empire had been extinguished. But Ryan knew better than to let his guard down. He had learned from experience that peace was often the calm before another storm. One evening, as Ryan sat at his desk reviewing reports, Parker appeared in the doorway, his expression serious. "Got a minute?" Ryan nodded, gesturing for him to come in. Parker dropped a file on the desk. "There's something you need to see. We've intercepted encrypted messages from inside the prison where K-9 and Alina are being held. It looks like they've been communicating with someone outside." Ryan's brow furrowed. "Someone's pulling strings?" Parker nodded grimly. "We don't know who yet, but the messages mention a name, the architect. Whoever this is, they're planning something big. Bigger than anything we've seen." Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. "What's the next move?" Parker leaned in. "We need you and Max to dig deeper. This isn't just about K-9 and Alina anymore, it's about whoever is orchestrating everything from the shadows. The new threat." The following days were intense. Ryan and Max worked tirelessly alongside the task force, following leads and gathering intel. Each clue led to more questions than answers. One night, while on a patrol near the industrial district, Max stopped abruptly, his ears perking up. Ryan tightened his grip on the leash, his senses on high alert. "What is it, Max?" he whispered. Max began pulling toward an old factory, his nose working furiously. Ryan followed, his hand resting on the grip of his weapon. As they approached, Ryan heard faint voices and the unmistakable sound of machinery. Peeking through a broken window, Ryan saw a group of men loading crates onto a truck. The crates were stamped with an unfamiliar logo, something he hadn't seen in any of Kane's or Alina's operations. Ryan radioed for backup, but before reinforcements could arrive, the men spotted him. "We've got company," one of them shouted. Max leapt into action, barking fiercely as the men scrambled. Ryan pursued one of them, trusting Max to handle the chaos behind him. The man led him deeper into the factory, where Ryan cornered him against a wall. "Who's running this?" Ryan demanded, his voice steady. The man smirked. "You don't even know what you're up against, Officer Carter. The architect is already 10 steps ahead of you." Before Ryan could press further, the man activated a device on his belt, a small explosive that sent smoke billowing through the room. By the time Ryan regained his bearings, the man was gone. Max trotted up to him moments later, holding a piece of torn fabric in his teeth. Ryan knelt down, taking it. "Good work, buddy. This might be exactly what we need." A deeper conspiracy. Back at the precinct, the evidence began to reveal a chilling pattern. The logo on the crates belonged to a shell corporation tied to international arms deals. The architect wasn't just rebuilding Kane's empire, they were expanding it into something far more dangerous. Ryan sat across from Parker in the briefing room, Max lying at his feet. "This isn't just about our city anymore," Ryan said. "This is global." Parker nodded. "And if we don't stop it here, it's going to spiral out of control. You and Max are our best chance at uncovering who the architect is and bringing them down. The hunt begins." Ryan knew this mission would test him and Max like never before. The stakes were higher, the enemy more elusive. But as he looked down at Max, who wagged his tail as if sensing his thoughts, Ryan felt a renewed sense of determination. "We've got this," he said softly, patting Max's head. Max barked in agreement, ready for the next chapter of their journey. The hunt for the architect consumed Ryan's days and nights. The clues they uncovered painted a picture of a mastermind operating far beyond the scope of anything he and the task force had dealt with before. With every lead Max sniffed out, it became clear they were chasing a ghost, someone who was always one step ahead. One evening, Ryan was called into Parker's office. Parker looked more tired than usual, his face lined with concern. "We've got a breakthrough," Parker said, sliding a folder across the desk. Inside was a photo of a luxurious mansion located in the hills just outside the city. "We traced the Shell Corporation funding the architect's operations. This estate is owned by one of their key operatives, a man named Elias Voren. He's a middleman, but a powerful one. If anyone knows the architect's identity, it's him." Ryan's jaw tightened as he studied the image. "What's the plan?" "We've got a warrant," Parker replied. "But this place is fortified like a fortress. We're going to need precision to get in and gather intel without tipping him off to our endgame. That's where you and Max come in." Ryan nodded. "We're ready." The infiltration. Under the cover of darkness, Ryan, Max, and a small team of officers approached the sprawling estate. The property was surrounded by high walls, cameras, and armed guards. Getting in unnoticed would be nearly impossible unless they had an edge. Max was that edge. Equipped with a specialized camera on his vest, Max led the way through a narrow gap in the estate's fencing. Ryan followed close behind, relying on Max's instincts to guide him. Inside the compound, Max froze, his ears twitching. Ryan crouched low, his hand resting lightly on Max's back. "What is it, buddy?" Max sniffed the air, then began pulling toward a side building, smaller and less guarded than the main mansion. Ryan signaled to the team, who moved in to secure the perimeter. Inside, they found a high-tech control room filled with computers and documents. One of the officers began downloading files while Ryan and Max stood guard. But the moment of triumph was short-lived. Alarms blared, and within seconds, the compound erupted into chaos. Guards flooded the area, their shouts cutting through the night. The escape. Ryan's radio crackled. "Carter, we've got what we need. Get out now." But retreating wouldn't be easy. As Ryan and Max moved toward the exit, A group of guards cornered them. Max growled, his body tense, ready to protect his partner at all costs. One of the guards sneered. "You should have stayed out of this, Carter. The architect's reach goes far beyond this city." Ryan held his ground, his weapon drawn. "We'll see about that." Before the guards could react, Max lunged, disarming the closest one with a precision that left the others scrambling. The distraction was enough for Ryan to take control, neutralizing the threat and pressing forward with Max by his side. They emerged from the estate just as reinforcements arrived, securing the compound and detaining Voren. The truth revealed. Back at the precinct, the files recovered from the estate revealed more than Ryan could have imagined. Schematics, financial records, and encrypted communications painted a clear picture of the architect's reach and a chilling plan for coordinated attacks across multiple cities. But one document stood out, a photo of Ryan and Max, taken without their knowledge, with the words "eliminate the threat" scrawled across it. Ryan felt a cold knot in his stomach. "They know who we are." Parker placed a hand on his shoulder. "That means we're getting close. They're scared of you, Ryan. Of both of you. And that gives us the upper hand." Ryan looked down at Max, who wagged his tail despite the tension in the room. "Then we keep going," Ryan said firmly. "We end this." The hunt for the architect had become personal. The city was on edge. Ryan and Max had come so far, piecing together fragments of the puzzle that had led them to the architect. With each step, they drew closer to uncovering the mastermind who had pulled the strings of Victor Kane's operation and orchestrated a wave of terror far beyond anything they could have imagined. One crisp morning, as Ryan sat at his desk, a new report came in. The encrypted messages they'd intercepted from the architect's network had finally been decoded. The plan was in motion. The architect was moving to strike, but this time, it wasn't just about power. It was about sending a message. Ryan's heart raced as he scanned the report. The target was personal, the heart of the police department itself. "They know," Ryan murmured. "They've been watching us all along." Parker entered, looking grim. "We've traced their movements. They're getting ready to hit the department's main headquarters. We need to act fast." Ryan glanced at Max, who was already at attention, sensing the shift in the air. "We're not waiting for them to make the first move. We go in now." The team mobilized quickly, preparing for the final confrontation. They didn't know exactly who or what they were up against, but one thing was certain: the architect had planned for this day for a long time, and they would be ready. The final showdown. As night fell, Ryan and Max led the team through the dimly lit streets, moving toward the precinct's headquarters. The city felt eerily quiet. It was as though everyone knew something big was about to happen. Inside the headquarters, Ryan and Max split off from the group, moving silently through the halls, their senses heightened. Max's ears twitched at every sound, and Ryan's hand stayed firmly on his gun, every step measured, every breath controlled. They reached the central security room. The door was ajar, and the room was empty, but the screens flickered, showing live footage of the precinct. The architect had already infiltrated. "It's a trap," Ryan muttered, but it was too late. The building went dark. Alarms blared, and the sound of gunfire echoed through the halls. The architect's people had breached the building. Chaos erupted as officers and armed assailants clashed. Ryan and Max moved swiftly, guiding the team through the corridors, eliminating threats as they went. The pair of them were unstoppable. Max's precision in the chaos was unmatched, and Ryan's sharp instincts kept them one step ahead. They finally reached the central command room, where a figure stood waiting, his back to them. Ryan's breath caught. It wasn't just any figure, it was Elias Voren. The man they had captured months ago. "Did you really think you could stop me?" Voren sneered, his hands raising. "You've been playing into my hands the whole time." Before Voren could react, Ryan fired, hitting him in the shoulder. Voren crumpled to the ground with a grunt. The room descended into chaos as officers closed in, securing the building. But the figure on the screen, the architect, smiled darkly. "You think this is over? You've only scratched the surface," the architect said. "There are others out there, waiting to carry my vision. You'll never stop what's coming." With a flicker, the screen went black. The aftermath. As the city began to heal, Ryan and Max knew they would never stop fighting. They had become symbols of justice, of perseverance, and of the unbreakable trust between a man and his dog. And wherever the architect or any other enemy might rise, Ryan and Max would be there ready for whatever came next. The end.